Imagine waking up to a world where the price of your smartphone, your electric vehicle, or even your child's life-saving medication suddenly shoots through the roof. Not because of a natural disaster, war, or a global production shortfall, but due to a single, sweeping policy decision made in Washington, D.C. This scenario isn't a dystopian fantasy or a plot from a blockbuster movie. It is the new reality that millions of Americans and billions of people across the globe are bracing for as the United States government rolls out one of the most aggressive tariff campaigns in modern history, with shockwaves rippling through every corner of the global economy. In recent months, the American trade policy landscape has shifted dramatically. President Donald Trump, returning to the White House with renewed determination, has chosen tariffs as his principal tool in the escalating contest for global economic dominance. But this time, the scale is unprecedented. The ambitions are broader, and the economic and political stakes are higher than ever before. Boardrooms are scrambling, markets are reeling, and dinner table conversations across the nation are filled with anxiety about what comes next. The most headline-grabbing announcement? A proposed 50% tariff on all copper imports to the United States. And if that sounds massive, consider this. There is also serious discussion of imposing a staggering 200% tariff on imported pharmaceuticals, a move that could have profound consequences for healthcare costs, drug accessibility, and the lives of millions of patients. To put this in perspective, these are not just abstract numbers or bureaucratic tweaks. Each percentage point translates into real dollars and cents, costs that inevitably find their way into the price tags of everything from cars to computers to critical medical treatments. The ripple effect will touch nearly every American family and reverberate through the global economy, impacting allies and adversaries alike. To truly understand the significance of this moment, we have to look back at the evolution of American trade policy. Tariffs have been part of the national economic playbook since the very founding of the United States. In the 19th century, tariffs shielded the budding American manufacturing sector from European competitors, fueling the nation's industrial ascent. For decades, these import taxes provided a major source of revenue for the federal government and were considered vital for national growth. However, over the last half-century, the pendulum swung dramatically in the other direction. The world saw an unprecedented era of globalization and free trade. The United States championed this movement, spearheading landmark agreements such as the North American Free Trade Agreement, the establishment of the World Trade Organization, and dozens of bilateral deals. Tariff barriers shrank to historic lows, unleashing a wave of global supply chains, international investment, and consumer choice. President Trump's first term in office marked a reversal of this long-standing consensus. The trade war with China, ignited in 2018, reintroduced tariffs as a primary instrument of both negotiation and economic pressure. But even those measures now appear measured compared to the sweeping actions being considered today. In April, nearly every major American trading partner saw the introduction of a blanket 10% tariff on their goods. While the European Union and Japan negotiated a temporary pause, President Trump has declared unequivocally that there will be no more delays when the August 1st deadline arrives. The doctrine of America First has moved from campaign rhetoric to the core of U.S. economic strategy. At the heart of this new approach lies copper, a metal often called the lifeblood of the modern economy. Copper is woven through nearly every aspect of our daily lives. It powers the electrical grid, forms the wiring in our homes, is essential to the batteries in electric vehicles, and is found in every smartphone, tablet, and server farm powering the cloud. The United States consumes massive amounts of copper each year, yet imports a significant share from countries like Chile, Canada, Mexico, and Peru. The new 50% tariff on copper imports is designed to force manufacturers to buy American. The administration's stated goal is to revitalize domestic mining and smelting operations, which have withered under foreign competition in recent decades. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick explained in an interview with CNBC, "We're aiming to revitalize American copper production, bring back high-paying jobs, and ensure that our critical infrastructure isn't dependent on foreign suppliers." Citing national security concerns, supply chain vulnerabilities, and the need to rebuild the American industrial base, the administration has doubled down on this aggressive approach. The market's reaction was immediate. Since the tariffs announcement, U.S. COMEX copper futures have surged over 12%. Investors and manufacturers alike are bracing for higher costs. Ole Hansen, the head of commodity strategy at Saxo Bank, issued a stark warning. A 50% increase is a massive tax on consumers of copper. It will ripple through the entire value chain, raising costs for manufacturers and end users alike. But copper is only the beginning. The administration's focus has now shifted to pharmaceuticals, a sector that touches every American family and defines life and death for many. From antibiotics and insulin to cutting-edge cancer therapies and vaccines, the vast majority of active pharmaceutical ingredients and finished drugs are produced outside the United States, especially in India, China, and Germany. President Trump has promised pharmaceutical companies a window of about 1 year to 1.5 years to relocate their production to American soil. After this grace period, foreign-made drugs could face tariffs as high as 200%. The implications are staggering. Australia's Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, has already voiced serious concerns, warning that such a policy could send shockwaves through the global pharmaceutical market. Analysts at J.P. Morgan forecast a sharp drop in drug imports once the tariffs take effect, predicting shortages and price spikes that could affect everything from generic painkillers to advanced biologics. In the background, the administration is also reviewing potential tariffs on lumber, semiconductors, and so-called critical minerals, resources vital for everything from smartphones and solar panels to military equipment and renewable energy infrastructure. Supporters of these tariffs argue that the benefits could be transformative. By some estimates, the new measures could generate up to $300 billion in additional government revenue by the end of 2025. A windfall that could help fund infrastructure, research, or even tax cuts. Ed Mills, managing director at Raymond James, voiced surprise that the copper tariff wasn't implemented sooner, saying, "It's a chance to reclaim our industrial might." The administration's line is clear. These steps are essential for economic security, national defense, public health, and the long-term resilience of American supply chains. Yet critics warn of mounting costs. Leading economists estimate that the average American household could see as much as $1,200 in additional tax burdens in 2025 as higher costs are passed down the line. Businesses are sounding alarms about skyrocketing expenses for raw materials, components, and medicines. The auto industry is already reeling under a new 25% tariff on imported vehicles, while electronics manufacturers warn that the rising cost of parts could force them to either raise retail prices or move operations overseas to remain competitive. Let's zoom out to see the global ripple effect. Zhao Yongcheng, a senior analyst at Benchmark Mineral Intelligence, predicts that copper prices will rebound sharply in Asian markets, particularly on the Shanghai Futures Exchange. This could hand foreign producers a short-term advantage, even as American companies rush to reconfigure supply chains. Meanwhile, Australian and European officials are openly discussing possible retaliatory tariffs on American goods, raising the specter of tit-for-tat trade wars reminiscent of the early 21st century. The World Trade Organization has already hinted at investigating whether these U.S. tariffs violate long-standing international agreements. So what does this all mean for ordinary Americans, business owners, and investors? In the short term, consumers should prepare for higher prices on a wide range of goods, from electric vehicles and home appliances to laptops, smartphones, and prescription medications. For business owners, it's time to take a hard look at supply chains. Can you shift sourcing to domestic suppliers? Are there alternative sources in countries not targeted by the new tariffs? Financial advisors are urging companies to diversify supply lines and lock in contracts before the tariffs fully take effect. The healthcare sector faces particularly acute challenges. Hospitals, pharmacies, and insurance providers warn that the cost of essential medicines could soar, putting pressure on public health programs like Medicare and Medicaid. The American Hospital Association has called on Congress to consider targeted exemptions for critical medications to prevent shortages and protect vulnerable patients. There is real concern that, in the scramble to secure domestic production, some vital drugs could become scarce or unaffordable for those who need them most. Investors are also facing a new world of risk and opportunity. The copper market, already volatile, has become a hotbed for speculation. Since the tariff announcement, copper futures have jumped by more than 12%, and commodity traders are betting on further increases as the August 1st deadline draws near. Shares of American mining companies have soared, while manufacturers relying on imported copper and pharmaceuticals have seen their stock prices tumble. For those looking to invest, the landscape is shifting daily, with both risks and rewards in play. Beyond the immediate headlines, there are profound questions about the long-term impact of these tariffs. Could they spark a renaissance in American manufacturing, bringing back high-paying jobs and reducing reliance on foreign suppliers? Or will they usher in a new era of inflation, supply chain turmoil, and global retaliation?
history offers some important lessons.
Consider the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of the early 1930s. This law imposed steep tariffs on thousands of imported goods, triggering a collapse in global trade, deepening the Great Depression, and sparking a wave of international retaliation. Economists warn that making similar mistakes today could have disastrous consequences for a tightly interconnected global economy.
Yet there are also success stories where tariffs have spurred domestic investment and innovation. For example, in the early 2000s, temporary tariffs on imported steel helped American mills modernize and stave off bankruptcy. However, the benefits were uneven, and many downstream industries, such as automotive and construction, struggled with higher costs, lost competitiveness, and layoffs.
What makes the current situation unique is the breadth and speed of the proposed changes. Rather than targeting a handful of sectors, the administration is taking aim at almost every major industry: copper, pharmaceuticals, autos, semiconductors, lumber, and critical minerals. The strategy is to deliver a powerful shock to the system, betting that companies will be forced to bring production home, even if it means short-term pain for consumers and businesses. Expert opinions are sharply divided. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick remains resolute.
Revitalizing American copper mining and drug manufacturing is not just about economics. It's about protecting our national security, our public health, and our future as a global leader. Lutnick points to recent supply chain disruptions during the COVID-19 pandemic as definitive proof that America cannot afford to rely on foreign suppliers for critical goods.
Opposing voices are just as passionate. Laura Tyson, former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, cautions that tariffs are a blunt tool. History shows that while tariffs can sometimes help targeted industries, they often backfire by raising prices, provoking retaliation, and hurting exports, she notes. What we need are smarter, more targeted policies. Investments in infrastructure, education, and technology, not blanket tariffs that risk hurting more than they help. Internationally, tensions are rising. The European Union has warned that it will respond with its own tariffs if American policies disrupt established trade flows. Australia, a major supplier of pharmaceuticals and minerals, is exploring coordinated action with Asian partners to defend its interests. Canada and Mexico, both parties to the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, are racing to negotiate exemptions and avoid a repeat of the trade disputes that shook North American supply chains in 2018. Let's take a deeper look at the pharmaceutical industry, which finds itself in an especially precarious position. Many of the world's largest drug companies operate extensive production networks in India, China, and Europe, leveraging lower costs and specialized expertise unavailable domestically. Relocating this intricate web of manufacturing to the United States could take years and require investments totaling in the billions. Even with a year to a year-and-a-half grace period, experts warn of potential shortages, delays, and challenges in maintaining quality and regulatory standards. There is also the risk that smaller, generic drug makers may not survive the transition, reducing competition and driving up prices even further.
For American workers, the picture is complex. The tariffs could create thousands, possibly tens of thousands, of new jobs in mining, manufacturing, and logistics, as companies seek to reshore production. On the flip side, they could also threaten jobs in industries that depend on imported materials or that export goods to countries likely to retaliate. The United States Chamber of Commerce has urged policymakers to consider transition assistance, tax credits, and workforce training programs to help businesses and workers adapt to this new reality. If handled poorly, the shift could lead to layoffs and economic dislocation in vulnerable communities. For consumers, the effects will be felt in both visible and invisible ways. Expect higher prices at the checkout counter, longer wait times for popular products, and potentially fewer choices on store shelves. Families already struggling with inflation could see their budgets stretched even further. Seniors and those with chronic health conditions could face new barriers to accessing affordable care, as insurance providers adjust coverage and pharmacies wrestle with shortages. So what can you do to prepare for these changes? Financial experts recommend reviewing your household budget and planning for increased costs, especially for big-ticket items like vehicles, electronics, and prescription medicines. If you work in a sector directly affected by the tariffs, keep an eye out for government relief programs, tax deductions, or retraining opportunities that may be rolled out in the coming months. For small business owners, adaptability is key. Explore alternative suppliers, renegotiate contracts where possible, and consider collaborative purchasing with other local enterprises to control costs. Stay informed about tariff implementation timelines and exemption processes. Sometimes, a well-prepared application can save you thousands of dollars each year.
From an investment perspective,
There are both risks and rewards on the horizon. Stocks of American mining and manufacturing companies could surge as domestic production ramps up, while firms heavily reliant on imports may face headwinds. Diversifying your portfolio and staying in close contact with a financial advisor can help you navigate the volatility and seize opportunities as they arise. As the August 1st deadline looms, the world is watching with bated breath. Will the United States succeed in triggering a new era of industrial revival and technological leadership? Or will the burdens of higher costs and global uncertainty outweigh the promised benefits? The answer may hinge on factors far beyond Washington's control. Global economic trends, shifting alliances, technological innovation, and the unpredictable responses of consumers and business leaders. One surprising detail that has caught even policy insiders off guard. The projected revenue from these tariffs could reach as high as $300 billion by the end of 2025, however. This figure is far from guaranteed. If higher prices dampen consumer demand, or if American exports suffer from foreign retaliation, much of that windfall could evaporate, offset by slower economic growth and shrinking global market share. What do you think? Are these tariffs the key to an American resurgence? Or are we on the brink of a costly trade war that could reshape the global economy for years to come? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Subscribe for the latest updates on global economics and technology, and stay tuned as we continue to break down the biggest moves in international trade and innovation. Your voice matters. Tell us how these changes are impacting your life, your business, and your community. We promise to track every development, every reaction, and every ripple